Hey, kia ora koutou te whānau. Welcome to the Invisible Sensei podcast. I had a lot of trouble thinking about how to introduce my guest today. And to be honest, he doesn't need much introduction because if you've been around karate for any length of time, you'll know the name and certainly know the contribution. So what I did was I turned to our old friend just then as I was introducing. I thought, let's go see what the internet, the chat GPT has to say about my guest. So this is what it came up with. Patrick McCarthy is a highly respected karate master and researcher known for his expertise in traditional Okinawan karate. He has written numerous books on the history and philosophy of karate, as well as practical applications of technique. McCarthy Sensei is considered one of the leading authorities on traditional karate and has dedicated his life to preserving and promoting its rich heritage. But I well remember seeing there was a series of books that my sensei, who realized I couldn't read, would encourage me to read. And in my 20s, when I learned how to read, I was lucky enough to be given a copy of the Bubushi that Hanshi McCarthy translated and added to and did a wonderful extrapolation on. And it's kind of been an ongoing journey from there. Many of my seniors here in New Zealand have been influenced, trained, and some have even been graded by Hanshi Patrick McCarthy. So, it's a huge honor for me to have him on the podcast today. Just one thing, if you're listening, you should be watching. Go to the YouTube channel and watch this. And if you're watching, why not try listening? So go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you like what we're talking about, do leave us a 28-star review. So Hanshi Patrick McCarthy, tēnā koe e te rangatira, no mahara mai ki tēnei wahanga. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. And how was the weather in Okinawa this beautiful morning?
Kia ora, ra. Well, first of all, as I look out the window over the beautiful ocean, I can see Hamahiga from here. It's a little tiny bit overcast, but oh gosh, my apologies. There's actually a little bit of rain on the ground. So, excuse me. So there's an interesting term we use here in Okinawa, but not from Japanese, from Uchinago, from Okinawan language, which is mistakenly referred to as Hogan sometime. It's not Hogan. It's not a dialect. It's an entirely different language. And we say kata bui, which, and usually, so if it's a beautiful day and it starts raining and you say, oh gosh, it's raining. Someone else says, kata bui desu kedomo. Don't worry, the weather will change in just a few minutes. So, but it's Okinawa, and it's the island birthplace of the art that brings you and I together. So in my opinion, it's always beautiful here. So
you are somewhat living the dream, and I've got some questions actually a little bit later about sort of your impressions and after the many years you spent living in Japan and now in Okinawa, and your many travels have seen you return, as you say, to the birthplace of this tradition, wonderful tradition. But before we get to that, I think your history is well documented, in the many books and the many lectures and the interviews. So yeah. I guess I'm going to start with what is on your mind at the moment? What's something which you've been working on and mulling over in terms of your personal training and your personal interpretation in the last, say, a few months, stuff that you're kind of getting out? I know you like to get out and train every morning on the beach. What's if it's not giving away too much, if it's not giving away the...
I didn't go this morning, by the way. So as you know, I have a very, very busy day lined up ahead of myself. With some of my colleagues are here from overseas, and I have to see them later this morning. So and we had a very early morning meeting. We've been speaking for a long time before the interview. Not like the marathon 9 hour.
I loved it.
Yeah. So, well, interesting, 5 years ago, I was 65 years old and I was, going to retire because I was so terribly busy with the travel and taking care of our flock, so to speak. And then kind of spreading myself as far as I could to take care of our instructors and the training program, and which is not just physical or competency based, but it's also, it deals with the I refer to as the bunbu, the not just the physical part, but also the scholarly or the intellectual part. So there was the historical, philosophical, spiritual, pedagogical, all of these sides that needed to be attended to, and while those don't particularly, the principles of which those are based upon, they don't change. Often ways with which to look at them or to deliver them change. For example, we mentioned earlier, you mentioned in the introduction, you looked up ChatGPT to find a tool. I'm going to do that. I've never done that, by the way. I'm going to have a look at that. I have to send my money in probably for that. But thank you for that introduction, by the way. And because of AI, we now have I want to say more succinct ways of looking at the same thing, or maybe whether it's a simple process of Occam's razor or whatever acronym I want to use to be able to get to my outcome in the most succinct way. AI has really saved me a lot of time and effort, so to speak. So, and here I am now, and at 70, and I'm thinking, I'm busier. I'm actually busier now, and I'm not traveling at all, but I'm busier now than I was before. And so I've got, let me break it up into two parts. We'll talk about the physical part in a minute. Just from the the writing part, I'm right at this very moment, I'm just putting the finishing touches on a revision of a work that was a collection of and about Funakoshi Gichin's connection with the art that brings us together. And some of the things that he'd written, now they have been published in a work that I think I started that work in 1999. And for about the last 5 years, I've been saying I'm going to make a new edition, which was the 4th edition. That's one that's coming out. But because of AI, for example, I've learned now how to use software to create a better quality of photograph, colorize it. I've been able to use the grammatical feature inside AI to correct my grammar, whereas I used to have to hire an editor or have a colleague or two look at my work to protect my grammatical inaccuracies or deficiency, if you will. And so the tanpen, that's called tanpenshu, which tanpenshu is a Japanese word which means compilation. And I've changed the title of it a bit to read I forgot what to call it. I think it was a collection of classical writings or something like that, which is what a compilation is in the first place, And I've come across since that some very rare photographs of Funakoshi Gichin, which I don't believe have been published before. So, and some of my colleagues have reached out to me over the years now to ask, did you have this? Or I've been working these last few years. I've been working and developed a wonderful friendship with a German researcher whose name is Thomas Feldman. Not sure if you met Thomas when you were here on the last trip. And he's responsible for doing the Itosu Anko, separate from Joe Swift's, for example, which I believe was a flagship of research surrounding Itosu Anko. But Thomas is, gosh, I just really envy. He's a remarkable. Well, I should say, like a German engineer. He's very meticulous and left no rocks unturned. I really learned a lot working with him on the Itosu project. And then he asked me if I would help collaborate on this Yabu-Kensu piece of work, which I was very happy to. And I had met the Yabu family. Well, actually, I think the first time I met them was gosh, nearly 40 years ago, and then I knew and you pronounce Yabu in America is pronounced Yabe. And so I knew Homer and some of the Yabe family from the West Coast, from Seattle. They were doing a project long ago. They were going to entitle it Memory, which was a kind of a biography of the Yabu family, dating back to Grandpa Yabu, and his family escaping to come to traveling. Anyway, he was very, very gracious to help me with my with this tempered shoe, and I've got some. I can't tell you what it is. I don't want to give it away. I've got some great stuff from him, and then of course I have a dear friend who's up in Hiroshima named Mark Tankoski. Mark is a wonderful researcher, a very, very modest gentleman, but a dynamic martial artist as well. But he's written extensively over the years with regards to various subjects, and sought out people like my instructor, Kincho Sensei, for additional work, and he's just brought something to the table that I hadn't even, not only had I not read it, I'd never other than knowing that he did it, I'd never seen it prior to that. So he's offered that. We're going to contribute this as well. So it's an expanded revision of that work. And then because of this AI and because of the photographs, and now because we finally discovered who Ituso Amko, what he looked like now. And then because of another colleague of mine here named Scott Mertz, interesting man, military veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, and now works for one of those 3-letter security agencies in the States here in Okinawa. I can't tell you which one. I hope the CIA is not listening, right? So he's
to all our friends in the Central Intelligence Agency, we wish you a beautiful good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. Hi, say.
Be careful, be careful, Joyce. So, and the fascinating part about working with Scott Mertz, who I just absolutely adore, is we did not start off on the right foot, by the way, back in the day. A couple of colleagues of mine who were early members of my group, Mario McKenna and Joe Swift, by the way. And this is going back more than 20 years. We had look, who's this young man in the United States who's advertising all this stuff, and he has the lost kata and photographs of people that we've never even knew it, and it turned out to be Scott. And then of course, we pushed that a little bit further, and we went to verify the sources, and that was cause for some calamity, if you will, and that created hard feelings because we discovered the sources were not exactly what he said he was. And I jump ahead 20 plus years, and when we met, the first thing we talked about was that issue, and he was when people make mistakes or they go down the wrong path. You got to really give it to somebody who realizes I went down the wrong road. I don't know what got into me, or maybe I was influenced by the wrong people. And the kid was 20 years old at the time, and he says, I've been influenced by this particular group, and I realize, what's the expression goes, it depends how far down the road you get before you realize that the destination is not the goal, it's the journey. And he said, it wasn't long after, you brought to my attention these anomalies that I realized this wasn't right. And he said, so the first thing is, let me apologize to you, and let's discuss it. And if there's some way that we can put that behind us and move forward, I'd like to do that if that's possible. And let me show you what I've been doing. And it's got a remarkable reservoir of research that he's done. And he's just, it's not an advertisement for his book, by the way, but he's going to be coming out with a project very soon, which is going to be very, very impressive, by the way. So anyway, lots of help from him. And of course, as you know, James Pankowitz, who in my opinion is one of two foreign people here who is just, there's nothing that they don't know about this island, the culture, the karate community, and you know, and of course, James had been a member in our group for, gosh, more than 10 years anyway. And I trust him implicitly, and he's been so helpful. You know, I offered him a position to be our events coordinator for our Gashiku, and I think last year we had more than 160 participants from more than 30 countries here at both the Budokan and the sorry, not the Budokan, Okinawa Karate-Kaikan. So we helped set a precedence with that, and so all of these things collectively come together. They create quite a plateful of activity. And so with that technology, I'm going to redo the multiple choki book. And I had early on in my career, after my first two books, I published. I kind of got sidetracked with doing a translation for Nagamine Shoshin Sensei, who I'd known and practiced in his dojo. I was not his student, but he would very graciously allow me to come into the morning classes. You know, remember I lived a decade here on the mainland between the mid-'80s and mid-'90s, and so, you know, and I got quite friendly with his son Takeuchi Sensei. And so they had requested, I got contacted by the publication company, and they said that they had requested me to do the translation because they liked the transparency that I represented and the clarity of not just the translation but interpretation. You know, the thing about translation is and you know, in the world of professional translators, there's a motto about not, you know, don't interpret what you think it means. You know, you just translate and let somebody else worry about that. I'm not such a person, you know. I kind of know who knows what, and so if I'm sitting and perhaps translating for someone, and whomever I'm translating for, I realize doesn't know maybe what a gamman or chinkuchi or muchimi might mean, and this guy's going, dekereba chotto muchimi wa aru desu kedomo, and I have to say, excuse me, I might have to explain or interpret the fact that this is what it means to bring the person up. So anyway, so I did the Nagamine Shoshin translation. I hope you ask me about that later. I'd love to talk about Tegumi, by the way. That's a thing. And so I put these other two works on hold, and they by the time they were finally published, they were called Ancient. You'd think I would remember them by now, right? Sorry, Ancient.
Yes, I had those books.
Ancient. I was going to say Ancient Martial Arts. I didn't even know they're called Ancient Okinawa Martial Arts.
Those are the books that I was referring to in the intro.
Oh, okay, yeah. So those books never got published the way I wanted them done, and there's a good story and a reason for that. I'm not going to bother you with that particular story today, but for those sitting out there in TV land listening to this, please read my final book. When I finished with these two, and it took me 18 years to get the copyright back. You know, I always love it when people think, "Oh, he's the copyright holder of that book." It might say that on the book, but I'm not the copyright holder of anything. You know, the publication company is the copyright holder, and those are the ones who may or may not give you the royalties, so to speak. So it took me 18 years. And by the way, Adina Emmerich in the UK, thank you so much. I love you dearly. A colleague of mine who's a solicitor in the UK helped me get those copyrights back because the books were never published the way I wanted them to. There was so many, you know, I'm a huge collector of, you know, information, you know, and I don't mean to say a historian. I love it when they say I'm a historian. I am not a historian. I just thought this all comes from the necessity, there's a, necessity is the mother of invention type of thing, and survival of the fittest is the mechanism. I like to call it the catalytic mechanism, because without it, you can never really continue to generate the energy.
Catalytic
momentum.
converter, I like.
I just was realizing, listen, hang on. I just listened to that guy, this guy, and that guy over there. And just as a matter, I'll just create a narrative for you to make a point, okay? You make the deductions from the abstract, okay? Miyagi Chojun, again, a man who trained with so many different people, eclectic collection, studied. I always wondered, I love the quote by Einstein that goes something like, if we knew what we were doing, it wouldn't be called research. So I was just working backwards from that. I would think, okay, so he probably didn't know everything he was doing. That's why they formed a research group back in 1918 and brought all these other guys in. Does anybody know what we're doing? Let's seek out those who sought this information rather than blindly follow the guys who have no idea what they're doing. And the end result is you've got this forward momentum occurring. You're using critical thinking to establish deeper understandings of the same thing, which bring everybody together. But anyway, so the end result here is here's a guy who pioneered a something which had become a tradition. Okay, so I never got a chance to meet him. He died long before I was around. But I got a chance to meet, like, let's say, most of who was still living back in the early 80s, senior students. And interestingly enough, every time I went to all the dojos, which you could do in those days. Let's talk about Okinawa later, but in those days, no problem. Shotokan, Mateoshi's, Meibukan, Junkan, places, and spend the morning, say hi, work out. No money, it was just a chimu gukuru desu kedomo. And but I would say, the guys doing seipai like this, and over there they were doing another way, or this dojo, and I would say, Sensei, chotto sumimasen kedo shitsumaru desu kedomo. So, excuse me, Sensei, question. Why do you, why do you, whatever it was, why do you, why this, oh. This is the way Miyagi-sensei taught me. This is the original way. I have no reason to disbelieve that, you're misleading me. That's, if you said it, I believe it. And, keep in mind, I met Miyagi's son as well. Actually, two of his sons. But that's a separate conversation for another time. And I thought to myself, okay, so, and these guys are direct students, and yet they say the kata goes this way. Oh, this is all about kata, my apologies. Kata is everything. Kata is karate, in my opinion. But I want to look at a classic time capsule through contemporary lens. You see, I don't want to look at it the way we're looking at it 25 or 30, 40, 50 years ago, or 100 years ago. And please ask me about why is it this way today? Why is it another way? I want to tell you. I want to help you understand that. And so, who was I? I was a kid in the dojo. I'm not in any position to tell them what's what, but I certainly noted these variables and these idiosyncrasies or anomalies, if you will. They're in my mind. And I was wondering, could it have been maybe just perhaps, not everybody does the same thing the same way to achieve the same outcome. That's a classic McCarthy sentence, okay? I love the templates because they sum up years of understanding a particular thing, right? You can get a nice, succinct evaluation of meaning in an accurate, definitive sentence, okay? So and I say, well, maybe, because the variables in learning, often from a pedagogical point of view, is the fight in the dog in the fight, and the circumstances in which it happens. So the acts of physical violence by which our traditions would be a means, they're not going to change. I mean, a two-handed manual strangulation. I'm pretty sure that means both hands on your throat, whether it was 500 years ago at the Shaolin Temple or today. It means both hands are on your throat, squeezing. Now, you might be sitting up from behind, whatever it happens to be, but that's the thing. Now, how you negotiate that would depend on several factors. And certainly, who you are is one of them. Because of who you are is, the invisible sensei, Tuari Dawson, 100 kgs, really super strong, young, handsome, angry.
God bless you. God bless you.
Put the tip on that. It's, you're going to handle that one way now Kosan, who's 51 kilograms and 65 years old, and I do my forensic research. I mean, I know what two-hand manual strangulation has done since the history of forensic science. It's not difficult to understand how many people have been choked to death by this. She's not going to handle that the same way, and then everything in between. So that's not a discriminatory comment. It's merely stating the facts. So whether you're an alpha male or a sigma female, or an intellectually or physically challenged person, or you're a child or something, everybody has to do the same thing differently in order to best use the potential that they have for the same act of physical violence. And so a lot of the work that I do or have done over the years is to, as in that particular field or that particular department. And it's funny because after I fell over this this concept, this contextual premise, which I gave a name to, called those acts of physical violence that are habitual in human nature, indicative of a particular behavioral pattern, are not. They're not isolated to a particular culture or ethnicity. They are human traits, and so I refer to them as habitual acts of physical violence. And in contrast to the guys, well, we call ours something else. Ours also dealt with. I say, the thing is, after the fact usually doesn't count. Well, I mean, you think about it for a minute. Seriously, if there's, I always saw it this way: is like let me arbitrarily take two-handed strangle. Like, in order for a person to wrap their hands around your throat, if you couldn't see it, that means you're probably sleeping or you're not paying attention. So there's that part where it's already on you, and there's what you can do is limited by the fact. And then there's you have the luxury of this confrontational distraction, and the behavior is becoming increasingly or aggressively violent. And this is the point in time with which to make the decision on how you're going to negotiate this, whether you're going to run away, fight or flight. And then, of course, there's the in-between part where it's in the process of happening, Now, so it's not after the fact, it's not certainly after you've been unconscious or even you've been sucker punched or something like that, And so how are these issues particularly dealt with? And so anyway, so I'm going to save that for later to talk about the physical part, because, I talk about it all the time. And I would like to think that, in spite of, having said it many times, and I know it's quite widespread now, and I know the impact that this discovery had upon my generation of learners. If I could say, maybe just only on the rise in popularity of my teachings, and being, pretty well sought after seminar instructor, just judging by where I've traveled teaching seminars over the last 30 years. So we'll leave that for a second. I want to finish about what I'm doing. So those two books, they're going to be redone. They're going to be redone the way I wanted them, rather than the way an editor who didn't like me and wanted to discredit me, who was working for who started working for a company, who the company didn't know that we had a prior history, and he hid that, and then made these books. Anyway, so we're gonna fix those up. I'm gonna bring those back out. They're gonna be great. I'm doing a revamp on the Bubishi as well. I'm gonna do it. I actually meant to do that a long time ago, but just life, travel, busy, caught up, and I just really didn't find the time. It's going to be called the Bubishi Companion, and it's going to focus on how you use the Bubishi, how it is used. And by the way, just while we're speaking about the Bubishi, can I tell you that I was in a separate interview I was doing a few months ago. I was asked about this Bubishi, and I think, it's funny. I was thinking back to my early life in Toronto after I had relocated from the Maritimes. I'm originally a Blue Noser. See, I'm a dumb Maritimer, man. Blue Noser is from Nova Scotia. Newf is from Newfoundland. I'm a heron choker from New Brunswick. Sorry about that. And somebody had asked me about the Bubishi, and I said, it's interesting. When I first went to Toronto, so I used to travel from my home out in Scarborough. I have to take the bus down to Warden Station, and then in those days, they took a subway from Warden Station down to Yonge and Eglinton. I used to take the Yonge Street subway all the way down to Dundas. And now you could take the subway across, but I was so fascinated by walking through Chinatown. I'd never met Chinese people before, and the smells, the sights, the sounds, the girls. It was absolutely. And anyway, there was one little restaurant I used to like to go to after training, and called the Something Restaurant. And then right next door to it was this Chinese bookstore, and you could buy tobacco and all that type of stuff there. But I used to be able to go in. I couldn't read or write Chinese, of course, in those days, but I used to look through books, and they had a lot of martial art books there. And actually. Okay, it's in there somewhere. I bought a little book. Was $2.40, and it was the 1934 study of Seipai, written by Mabuni Kenwa. And in the back half of it is the Bubishi, and
Wow.
But this is the pirate. It was a pirate copy, pirated by some Taiwanese publication house, and of course, a lot of these books are out of print and pre-war, and so anybody, no copyright on them anymore, so hence the term pirate copy, and so that was in 1974. So I had my own school out in East York on O'Connor Drive, and I was downtown, almost 2-3 times a week. So anyway, jump ahead now. This is 50 years that I have maintained this passion with that book, and I've seen as many copies as you could possibly imagine, and talked to everybody who has been regarded as an authority on the Tokushiki Iken, Otsuka Tadahiko, Hokama Tatsuhiro. Folks in China as well, Fujian, Shanghai, Shaolin, and so on. And but I have never seen the actual original, the original work itself. And so back around 2013, I started corresponding with this gentleman in Taiwan, and his name is Liu Kangyi, and he has a bookstore. He's a collector, and he's the curator of the Taiwan Martial Arts Research Group Society. And so we just correspond back and forth about that which there is that attracts our attention. And he told me, he said, "Hey, I'm working toward getting this old Qing period. Qing period is not the Ming period, is 1166 to 1644, and the Ming the Ming finishes. Then it's the Qing. The Mongol Empire is from 1644 till 1911. So Qing, late Qing, so 1800s, and mid to late 1800s." And he sends me a couple of little slides, a couple of little photographs of it. I go, wow, colorized, wow, that's better. Anyway, we correspond back and forth for a couple of years. He wins the bid, gets the book, and I went, oh gosh, but he says, we're going to do a translation, and I'll send it to you. And I went, oh, okay, great. So 3 years later, in 2016, he finished the translation. It looks like this, and inside it, you can see, oops, sorry, you can see the actual
illustrations.
The actual ones,
And guys, if you're listening, if you're not watching this, you're listening to this. Hanshi McCarthy is just holding up a book with the original drawings, illustrations of the bubishi. So get these to YouTube and watch it.
Looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you his contact details. And here, and he lovely signed a copy. Yeah. He signed a copy. And look at. They did a absolutely magnificent translation. Mm-hmm. And look, he mentioned my name all over the book, as an authority in the work and stuff like that. And he said, so now that I'm living in Okinawa, that's the back half of the book as well.
That's really lovely.
Yeah, he reached out and said, "Why don't you come and visit?" And I wrote back, and I met actually, my apologies. Let me back up a little bit. Let me just follow the trail back. I follow the trail back to a young man named Will. Now, I don't know if you know Will. The first time I came into contact with Will was, hang on, I'm just gonna, I want to say a couple of years ago, I was watching a Karate by Jesse video of a journey he went out onto China.
Oh, you said gentleman he studies Chinese
Jesse.
martial arts, and
yes, and that Jesse's dad was my Swedish representative for many years, and I taught out there at the Combat Academy for years. So Jesse was first introduced to two-person drills and catch wrestling, stuff like that, from the seminars that I taught at the Combat Academy. And but he's become this remarkable overachiever young man who's helped introduce a classical tradition to a generation of people who might not have actually been inclined to look down that avenue without his remarkable skills. And now he's gone on to be a phenomenon. He's a social media influencer, I think, if that's the correct term. But he reached out to me, he's used a lot of my concepts over the years for a lot of the work that he does, especially in the historical area, and he reached out to me. He said, "Look at Sensei, I'm going to China, and I want to do some more. I want to look around for the bubishi." And I was particularly interested in the white crane and the Hmong fist parts of the bubishi. And I said, okay, so, and I'd already introduced him to my British colleague in Spain, Martin Watts, who's again, a Yong Chun white crane stylist. So he had that connection already. And I said, when you go to Fujian, you will not find Monk Fist or Lohan Chuan there under that name because of the issues that largely unfolded from the destruction of the Shaolin Temple, the exodus of the instructor monks, escaping the brutal hand of Chiang Kai-shek. And so this one of these monk fist boxers arrives in Fujian. He doesn't, hey, I'm teaching monk fist over here. So he was taken in by a guy who ran a tea shop, and tea, incense, opium, that was a very popular product of that era. And so the guy became known as the guy who teaches at the incense shop, and ultimately it would become known as incense shop boxing, So I give him and I saw there was a young man, he had a young Australian man with him as a translator who spoke remarkable Mandarin, and his name was Will Wayne as in Wain Williams, and Will, actually, tell you the truth, just on that topic, Will's going to be coming here. I hope it's October when I have my Gashigo again, but I think it might not be until November. And he's going to do this remarkable exploration, completely dispassionate, because he's a Chinese stylist. But in seeking out the original links between China, and if anybody can do it, Will can do it. That kid is amazing. The depth of research, completely dispassionate, and he's a good friend of James's as well. So he's come. And anyway, I'm off the topic a little bit. I'm wondering, because Jesse can't speak Chinese, and two things that really impressed me. So I'm watching the video. Jesse sends me a copy of the video, and I'm watching it. Hey, Sensei, what do you think about this video? And I went, yeah, another great job, man. That's why you got 1 million spectators, 1 million viewers, because you know how to do it. And then they go into this one guy with this Chinese guy's apartment, and all you hear is the English translation in the background, and the text. Yes, well, of all of the most valuable fighting books and manuals from the Qing period, this Wu Bei Ji is the most important. And he's on his keyboard looking at his computer, and in front of the computer is a translation of one of my bubushis, and I thought to myself. And later I found out that the guy who was doing the translation was Will. And so then jump ahead to last year. And now I'm following Will's channel. It's Monkey Picks a Peach. If you're not watching Monkey Picks the Peach on Will, you must. The guy is absolutely brilliant. And so I go over there and I see that he's now in Taiwan at Lion Bookstore talking with Liu Hangyi, and he's with my colleague, our dear friend Cesar Bukowski, and they have a little tour around the shop and this and this. But they say, I'm going to now show you a very valuable document. And they show them this document, but it's the original. It is not published in hardcover. It is wrapped up in a very, very traditional Qing style, they stitch the back pages and stuff like that. And I look and I went, oh my God, I must do that. I have to go. I gotta go. And then I listened to another one with Will in an isolated conversation talking about that manual, and they flip through the pages. And first of all, I'm amazed that Mr. Liu allowed them to handle the book without gloves on. It's the original. So anyway, I reach out. I'm talking to a guy named John Estiel, And John is a Filipino who's lived in Taiwan for, gosh, John, if I make a mistake, I apologize. I think 30 years. He's an astute martial arts, a passionate martial arts practitioner, studies with Master Liu, by the way, and a fluent speaker. And he said, look, if you come, and Mr. Liu, I've checked with Mr. Liu, he'd love to have you. I will serve as your translator. Now, it's great. You know, I don't have to use AI to translate like I used to in the old days to communicate with him. And he can, and in long story short, I fly to Taiwan, and they were so gracious, so, oh my gosh, so the camaraderie was so warm. And I mean, I felt like I was going to the home of one of my students. They were so nice. And I met some wonderful people, and there was that moment where he handed me the work and said, please. And I was a little bit nervous actually holding my hands at first, but he did not insist on anything. I put that book down, and I just took my time savoring every single moment. And we talked about techniques on each of the pages. And I mean, having spent really most of my adult life studying this work and translating it and seeking out the most senior authorities of researchers who've worked on it. There was not a lot that I don't know about that work. And but he was able to reveal to me some special parts about that book, which have not been put in the English publication. And I don't mean to say we're sworn to silence, but it's better that we use it for what we call jigaden. For example, even my own students back in the day used to get a little bit apprehensive about why I was happy to put our secrets on video and then DVD and so on. And I would say, look, it's just the kata by itself. And if you don't understand the contextual premise by which the solo reenactments serve as the mechanism through which to negotiate them, it's just a kata. It's just a collection of wonderfully beautiful cosmetic techniques. So I said the drills are auxiliary. It's like Hojo Undo, for example. Hojo Undo is supplementary training. And I mean, if you're a big, huge, strong guy, you don't necessarily need to do that particular type of strength training. If you're not such a big, strong guy and you need to learn how to generate, the body mechanics to deliver enough momentum to get a percussive, the kinetic energy transfer, you might need to learn these things. And so, but the acts of physical violence themselves, they need to be the contextual premise through which the application practices become a means. And that, the pathway of using, passive resistance and compliancy to learn to create a let's say a familiarity with why it's a dangerous and violently brutal behavior before you can then effectively negotiate it, and then you gradually to exponentially invest the practice on both sides, by the way, not just the attacker or the defender, with aggressive resistance. And I use the word carousel drill, because like a carousel goes around and around, like line drills. You have to practice that one act of physical violence and that one or two or three variations on the common theme against it under varying circumstances, because what might work under this set of circumstances, against, say, a two-handed man who was strangled, might not work against when you're pressed up against an ATM machine being strangled or something, And so And then once that is established, that you're pretty much able to effectively negotiate that particular act of physical violence under any set of circumstances, then you move on to the next one and the next one and the next one, and you make the deduction on the abstract until you've got, and it's not, we don't have a indefinite number of acts of physical violence. I often wonder when people try to quantify this, where their mind is at. I mean, there's really only so much you can do. I mean, it's either percussive impact from being struck, your weapon, head, elbow, whatever, and of course, then understanding the how you move your body in order to generate enough mobility to create a kinetic energy impact that's going to be of any value to cause the withdrawal effect or the pain, and subsequently subjugate the person. Or so it's seizing hands, arms, legs, or teeth. I mean, the function of a muscle is to contract, and then when you contrast these, especially the capturing part, especially the catching part, or the escaping of being catched, it's 6 of one, half a dozen on another. It's well, what mechanics and principles upon which their effectiveness rests can be quantified. So I mean, it's not rocket science here, but you might as well be speaking in a foreign language to somebody who's come up in a conformist-based school where they've been indoctrinated. I must check with my sensei first. My favorite is, okay. Yes, so he moved my fist 2 inches, and my favorite is the don't fix a good story with the truth. Is the Funakoshi said, Sannen no kata, 3 years on the one kata. If you practice kata for 3 years, all answers will be intuitively obvious. Bullshit.